Okay. Okay. Good evening, students. Hope you can hear me. Am I audible? Good evening. Okay. Right. Okay. So today our topic is about mixed method research, right? So you studied quantitative survey-based research, quantitative research, and qualitative research. Today we are talking about mixed method research, right? Mixed method research. So before we move to the theoretical aspects or the content of mixed method research, so let's look at this video to get some sort of idea about mixed method research, right? So we'll first watch this video, right? So then we'll move to these slides about the theoretical aspects of mixed method research, right? Hope you can hear the sound. So can you hear the sound of the video? Okay, right. Thank you.
I was excited to be a part of the dream theme, and then I found out I'm leading off the nightmare section of it. And certainly there are things about the climate crisis that qualify, and I have some bad news, but I have a lot more good news. I'm going to propose 3 questions, and the answer to the first one necessarily involves a little bad news. But hang on, because the answers to the second and third questions really are very positive. So the first question is, do we really have to change? And of course, the Apollo mission, among other things, changed the environmental movement, really launched the modern environmental movement. 18 months after this Earthrise picture was first seen on Earth, the first Earth Day was organized, and we learned a lot about ourselves looking back at our planet from space. And one of the things that we learned confirmed what the scientists have long told us. One of the most essential facts about the climate crisis has to do with the sky. As this picture illustrates, the sky is not the vast and limitless expanse it appears when we look up from the ground. It is a very thin shell of atmosphere surrounding the planet. That right now is the open sewer for our industrial civilization as it's currently organized. We are spewing 110 million tons of heat-trapping global warming pollution into it every 24 hours. Free of charge, go ahead. And there are many sources of the greenhouse gases. I'm certainly not going to go through them all. I'm going to focus on the main one, but agriculture is involved, diet is involved, population is involved, management of forests, transportation, the oceans, the melting of the permafrost. But I'm going to focus on the heart of the problem, which is the fact that we still rely on dirty carbon-based fuels for 85% of all the energy that our world burns every year. And you can see from this image that after World War II, the emission rates started really accelerating. And the accumulated amount of man-made global warming pollution that is up in the atmosphere now traps as much extra heat energy as would be released by 400,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every 24 hours, 365 days a year. Fact-checked over and over again, conservative, it's the truth. Now, it's a big planet, but That is a lot of energy, particularly when you multiply it 400,000 times per day. And all that extra heat energy is heating up the atmosphere, the whole Earth system. Let's look at the atmosphere. This is a depiction of what we used to think of as the normal distribution of temperatures. The white represent normal temperature days, 1951 to 1980, arbitrarily chosen. The blue are cooler than average days. The red are warmer than average days. But the entire curve has moved to the right in the 1980s, and you'll see in the lower right-hand corner the appearance of statistically significant numbers of extremely hot days. In the 90s, the curve shifted further, and in the last 10 years, you see the extremely hot days are now more numerous than the cooler than average days. In fact, they are 150 times more common on the surface of the Earth than they were just 30 years ago. So we're having record-breaking temperatures. 14 of the 15 hottest years ever measured with instruments have been in this young century, and the hottest of all was last year. Last month was the 371st month in a row warmer than the 20th century average, and for the first time, not only the warmest January, but for the first time, it was more than 2 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the average. These higher temperatures are having an effect on animals, plants, people, ecosystems. But on a global basis, 93% of all the extra heat energy is trapped in the oceans. And the scientists can measure the heat buildup much more precisely now at all depths, deep, mid-ocean, the first few hundred meters. And this too is accelerating. It goes back more than a century, and more than half of the increase has been in the last 19 years. This has consequences. First-order consequence, the ocean-based storms get stronger. Super Typhoon Haiyan went over areas of the Pacific 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than normal before it slammed into Tacloban as the most destructive storm ever to make landfall. Pope Francis, who has made such a difference to this whole issue, visited Tacloban right after that. Superstorm Sandy went over areas of the Atlantic 9 degrees warmer than normal before slamming into New York and New Jersey. The second-order consequences are affecting all of us right now. The warmer oceans are evaporating much more water vapor into the skies. Average humidity worldwide has gone up more than 4%, and it creates these atmospheric rivers. The Brazilian scientists call them flying rivers, and they funnel all of that extra water vapor over the land where storm conditions trigger these massive record-breaking downpours. This is from Montana. Take a look at this storm last August as it moves over Tucson, Arizona. It literally splashes off the city. These downpours are really unusual. Last July in Houston, Texas, it rained for 2 days, 162 billion gallons. That represents more than 2 days of the full flow of Niagara Falls in the middle of the city, which was, of course, paralyzed. These record downpours are creating historic floods and mudslides. This one is from Chile last year, and you'll see that warehouse going by, their oil tanker cars going by. This is from Spain last September. You could call this the running of the cars and trucks, I guess. Every night on the TV news now is like a nature hike through the book of Revelation. I mean, really. The insurance industry has certainly noticed the losses have been mounting up. They're not under any illusions about what's happening. And the causality requires a moment of discussion. We're used to thinking of linear cause and linear effect, one cause, one effect. This is systemic causation. As the great Kevin Trenberth says, all storms are different now. There's so much extra energy in the atmosphere. There's so much extra water vapor. Every storm is different now. So the same extra heat pulls the soil moisture out of the ground and causes these deeper, longer, more pervasive droughts, and many of them are underway right now. It dries out the vegetation and causes more fires in the western part of North America. There's certainly been evidence of that, a lot of them. More lightning. As the heat energy builds up, there's a considerable amount of additional lightning also. These climate-related disasters also have geopolitical consequences and create instability. The climate-related historic drought that started in Syria in 2006 destroyed 60% of the farms in Syria, killed 80% of the livestock, and drove 1.5 million climate refugees into the cities of Syria, where they collided with another 1.5 million refugees from the Iraq War. And along with other factors, that opened the gates of hell that people are trying to close now. The
Okay, so I hope you watch this video, and I think you know the speaker, right? So he's Al Gore, one of the former vice presidents of US. So he was talking about the global warming situation. So why I showed this video? So the reason is because we should study some of the basic ideas about what mixed method is, right? So you have to study the basic ideas of what mixed method is, right? So therefore, we should start with a broader question, right? So in mixed method research or in qualitative research, so we start with a broader question. So like what kind of evidences that we use to study the problems in social sciences, right? So when it's come to qualitative research, so most of the time we try to understand or we try to solve or we try to understand about the problems in social sciences, right? So when you study that type of issues, right? So documentary evidence is very important, right? Documentary evidence is one method that you could study that type of issues, right? So that's why I showed you that documentary, right? So when you watch that one, so I wanted to emphasize from this video, so how you could relate this video to mixed method research, right? So it's a documentary video, right? Documentary evidence, and it is about the global documentary on global warming, right? So the main idea to show this video is so how you could relate this video to mixed method research. Because in mixed method research, as I mentioned earlier, so we study the problems in social sciences, right? We study problems in social sciences. So in studying social sciences, so we use different types of methods, right? Maybe we can interview, maybe we can watch the situation, so that is we call ethnography, and also documentary evidence also very important, right? So this is about the documentary evidence of global warming, right? So normally you can watch documentaries, maybe YouTube, maybe TV, Netflix, so you can watch those type of documentaries. So documentaries may be about the real, how to say, maybe something similar to global warming, wildlife, right? So documentaries on disasters, maybe different documentaries on different real life situations, right? So you can watch those type of things, right? You maybe TV, Netflix, YouTube, right? So if I take this documentary on global warming, right, which you watched earlier, so we can understand the nature of mixed method research. because in this documentary, so you saw, so the speaker, right? So the speaker, the algo, right? So he combines the both stories, as well as he justify those stories with using some statistics. You saw maybe the graphs, right, the bar charts, some descriptive statistics, and also he showed some videos, right, the flood situation, the deserts, right, the melting glaciers. So he showed some videos, and he showed the justifications of those videos using some graphs, bar charts, some statistics, descriptive statistics. So that is what we do in mixed method as well, right? So you should have a story to explain, and also you should justify that story using some statistics. So that is what we do in mixed method research, right? So that's why I showed you that documentary video, right? Clear? Are you clear? So please respond, right? Students, any questions, or are you clear about it? What I explained about the basic things of mixed method research. So why don't you talk? Okay. So anyway, you have to talk, right? So I'll give some activities. So you have to explain those activities during this session, right? So without talking, so you can't wait, right? Okay. So if I further explain this situation using this slide, right? So I can further explain about the mixed method research using this. So this is also I took from a documentary video, right? The video on a particular documentary. It's about the glaciers, right? So in this documentary, so speaker talk about how the glaciers change over time. So see the left slide, the picture reflects the relevant the melting of glaciers from 1973 to 2006. So also he talks about what are the effects of melting glaciers, right? For an example, maybe because of melting glaciers, so the sea level maybe rise, right? So the warming of air, right? Maybe coastal erosion, and the storms like hurricane, typhoon, right, may be occurred because of melting glaciers, right? So he talks about, so during the video, he talks about, so the what are the effects of melting glaciers. And also in this, the right hand side, right? So here it says atmosphere CO2, right? So this is about the in Hawaii, right? So he talk about, right, using some sort of graph, so how these changes occurred, right? So maybe rising the temperature in Hawaii, right? So he explained this situation using this graph, right? So that is a kind of a mixed method approach, right? So this is a kind of a mixed method research, so which we use to tell a story with relevant statistics or facts, right? Using numbers or graphs or any sort of maybe the bar charts, statistics, descriptive statistics. So you explain the story using that type of thing. And the next one, so this is also some one example to explain about the mixed method research. So here it explains about the hurricane, right? So hurricane in New York City. So you can see the story here. And this, because of this, right? So the impacts or the effects are explaining, right, using numbers in this way, right? So in this documentary, so the speaker explains about how these types of natural disasters, right? Natural disasters may be flood, may be landslides, may be typhoon, right? So natural disasters impact on people's life, right? So how these things affect people's life. So especially the people's houses, right? So maybe their lives, right? So they are these things. So the story explains this. So if we talk about the people's life after this type of natural disaster, right? So the people maybe end up with homeless, right? Maybe displaced, right? So after, so we also experience these type of things in Sri Lanka, right? So landslides. So recently the landslides and also the floods, right? So after these type of natural disasters, so people end up with homeless or displaced. So also there may be outbreaks, right? So outbreaks of diseases. Outbreaks of diseases may be due to lack of sanitation. So maybe food, water, right? So the medication, right? So maybe there can be some sort of outbreaks of diseases, right? So due to lack of sanitation. So therefore, you can talk about those type of effects using some statistics, right? So like number of people who missed their relatives after this type of natural disaster. So number of people who are homeless, right? So number of people affected by diseases. Likewise, so you can explain that story using numbers, right? So that is what we do in mixed method research as well. Right. So therefore, remember, so the documentary evidence is a main type of, right? So interviews also main type of data collection method we use in mixed method research. And also this type of documentary evidence also we use mainly in mixed method type research, right? So that is what I want to emphasize at the beginning, right? So these are some of the simple examples to have some sort of idea about mixed method research. So mainly, so you should have a story. So that story you explain or you justify by certain statistics, right? Numbers, right? So that is simple examples about mixed method research. Okay, so now you have some sort of idea about mixed method research. So let's look at, so this one. So understanding the core idea of mixed method research. So you have quantitative data as well as you use qualitative data, right? So in combination, right? So you use both quantitative and qualitative data. So that methodology we call mixed method research, right? So in between, so that's mean you use part of quantitative data, part of qualitative data. So then we call it as a mixed method research. So here it says, this is an alternative approach to management research that combines elements of quantitative and qualitative research methods. So that's why, so here you can see we use the elements of quantitative data and the qualitative data. Mixed method research is a methodology for conducting research that involves collecting, analyzing, and integrating quantitative and qualitative research in a single study or a longitudinal program of inquiry, right? So in mixed method also, right? So you collect data, you analyze data, and you integrate quantitative and qualitative data, maybe in a single study or you can use the longitudinal type of study. So that's mean, so when you do a single study, so you do a study in a point of period, how to say. So if you want to do a study, so you collect data, you analyze data, you integrate those data in a single study. Longitudinal study means, so you study in a span of period, right? So maybe you study a particular research issue from 2020 to 2026. So you study during that period, not a point of a situation, right? Point of a, how to say. So in cross-sectional studies, so you study in a particular time, right? So particular point. But longitudinal means, so you study a span of time, right? So maybe 2020 to 2026. So sometimes we study longitudinal study, we call retrospective study. So that's mean from 2026 to backward you study, right? Longitudinal studies. So from, if you study from 2020 to 2026, so that is a retrospective longitudinal study, right? So in mixed method research also, you collect data, you analyze data, and you integrate both quantitative and qualitative data in a single study or a longitudinal group, right? So a research that combines quantitative and qualitative methods to answer the research question. So in mixed method also, you have a research question. So for an example, so in qualitative studies, so you start with a broad idea, right? So you have a hunch, right? So kutuhala. So you have a hunch. From that hunch, you decide the broader idea of a research that you want to study. Then from that broad idea you derive a research question, right? So you have a problem statement. From the problem statement, you have research questions. Then you decide research objectives, right? For each and every research objective, so you have some sort of research method. Maybe for first research question, you do using quantitative data collection. Second one may be using interviews, qualitative. So likewise, to answer the research question, right, to answer your research issue, to answer the research question, you use both quantitative and qualitative data, right? So that is what you do under mixed method research. Research that combines quantitative and qualitative methods to answer the research question, right? So that is what we do in mixed method research. So the purpose of mixed method research is that both quantitative and qualitative research in combination provide a better understanding of research problem or issue than either research approach alone. So when you do a quantitative research, right? So you follow the quantitative process, right? So maybe you have research question, then you develop hypothesis. Based on the hypothesis, you collect data, then you analyze the data, then you test whether the hypotheses are accepted or rejected, right? So that is the only way you do if you follow the survey-based or quantitative study. When it's come to qualitative research, so you have a main research we call propositions, right? So you have a main research idea. From that idea, you decide your main research question. Based on the question, you have objectives. So based on that, you collect data using maybe interviews, documents, right? So likewise. So that is the process that you follow in qualitative research, right? So, but in mixed method research, so you have both. You follow the both processes. So therefore, you can understand the particular research issue, right, better than either using a qualitative or quantitative research approaches alone, right? So you have you can provide a better understanding about the research problem or issue than either quantitative or qualitative research alone. So that is the advantage of mixed method research. So this provides the broad perspectives leading to an in-depth understanding of a subject under study. Because when you study survey-based research, right, so you study the surface level, right? So you send a lot of questionnaires to a lot of companies, right? So based on that, you generalize the results. And also in qualitative research, so you select a particular organization, then you study that particular organization. So you can't generalize that idea. But in mixed method research, so you can follow those two approaches at once. So therefore, you can understand a particular research issue in depth because you follow the both methods, right? So that is mixed method research. So to have some sort of idea, right, about mixed method research, so I'll use a simple example in mixed method research, right? So here it says the impact of advanced manufacturing, right? So impact of advanced managerial accounting techniques on organizational performance, right? So here it says mixed method study. So when you do a mixed method study, so you can specify in your title like this, right? So it's a mixed method study. So then the reader can, so at the beginning, reader understand, okay, so in this study, so we can find both quantitative and qualitative findings or data collections or the methodologies, right? So therefore, so sometimes, right, when you do a mixed method research, so we specify, so this is a mixed method study in the title, right? So what do you want to study? So how advanced manufacturing technology, advanced management accounting techniques impact on organizational performance, right? So what is the purpose? So this study aims to explore how the implementation of advanced management accounting techniques such as activity-based costing, balance scorecard affects organizational performance in medium-sized manufacturing firms, right? So specifically, it explains in the purpose, right? So we study this issue particularly in medium-sized manufacturing firms, right? Or you can specify in the Colombo Stock Exchange or the Chamber of Commerce, the list of Chamber of Commerce, the companies listed in Chamber of Commerce or companies listed in Colombo Stock Exchange. So you can specify, right? So then the reader understand, okay, so this study is particularly to medium-sized manufacturing firms, right? So what is the aim? So we want to explore how the implementation of advanced manufacturing accounting techniques, advanced management accounting techniques like ABC, like balance scorecard, affects organizational performance. So that is the main purpose, right? So based on that purpose, right, so you decide 3 research questions. So you can see here, how do medium-sized manufacturing firms perceive the usefulness of advanced management accounting techniques? How do medium-sized manufacturing firms perceive, right? So that is a kind of a quantitative. So you want to identify how medium-sized manufacturing firms perceive. So that is a kind of quantitative process, right? Then the second one, so what are the quantitative effects of implementing these techniques on financial performance metrics, right? So this is specifically mentioned quantitative effects. And here, the third one, what are the qualitative? What are the qualitative impacts on organizational processes, employee performance, and decision making? Right? So sometimes, right, so we use how and why, right? How and why questions in case studies. So this is, you can consider as a qualitative question as well. And also, so when you use a term like perceive, so that is more towards to quantitative studies, right? So if you study the perceptions of people, so, right, perceptions of people, so then it goes with quantitative studies, right? So anyway, so when you do a mixed method research, in your research questions, right, in your research questions, so you should provide quantitative side question as well as qualitative side research questions. So that is must, right, in your research questions or in your research objectives. So you have to specify research objectives goes with quantitative study and also goes with qualitative study, right? So therefore you have to remember, so if you use what questions, so it always quantitative. How and why, that is qualitative. So impacts, if you want to study effects, impacts, so that is quantitative. So likewise, so using those terms, so you have to design your research questions or objectives, right? But the main thing, when you do a mixed method research, so in your research questions or objectives, so you should show both quantitative and qualitative research questions or objectives, right? So these are the research questions. So let's look at the quantitative phase. So when you do a quantitative phase about that particular research issue, so you can see, so you select 100 medium-sized manufacturing firms that have implemented advanced management accounting techniques, because your research question is, right, so how implementation of advanced management accounting techniques impact organizational performance. So therefore, you have to select the medium-sized manufacturing firms which have implemented, right, which are implemented advanced management accounting techniques. So therefore, you collect data using a questionnaire, right, using a questionnaire to study the usage and perceived effectiveness of management accounting practices, right? And also, you want to study the performance of organization, because here you study the management accounting practices, how these practices impact on organizational performance. So how we are going to study organizational performance? So that is using financial data. You can collect financial performance data, maybe using annual reports, maybe internal documents, right? So you check the profitability, return on investment, cost reduction. So those information, right, using annual reports or internal documents for a period of 3 years before and after implementation of these techniques, right? So you want to test the improvement or the effect, impact. So therefore, you have to study the performance before you implement these management accounting techniques and after implementing these management accounting techniques. So therefore, you can use the financial data to check the performance before and after. And Also, you can analyze your data. So in the quantitative phase, so you can analyze these data. So you collect data using questionnaires. So these data you can analyze using descriptive statistics, right? So you can test, t-test, regression analysis to determine the impact of management accounting techniques on performance, right? So because here you collect those data under the data collection. So then you analyze these data, right? So when you analyze these data, so you use descriptive statistic, regression analysis, t-test, so those things. So that is the quantitative phase. Then we'll go to qualitative phase. So here you select 15 firms. So here you administered the questionnaires to 100 medium-sized companies, maybe online or maybe you post them through emails. So you send these questionnaires to 100 medium-sized companies under the quantitative phase. But when it's come to qualitative phase, so you choose 15 firms from the quantitative phase. So from this, you choose 15 companies, right? Selected based on their performance improvements, right? You select 15 companies from the 100 medium-sized manufacturing firms, right? You select the 15 firms based on the performance improvements, right? So you select the most financially improved, right? The performances, so from the financial statements, so you can select the companies, right? So from that, you select the highest performing companies. You select highest performing companies from these 100 medium-sized manufacturing companies, right? Then you collect data. You collect data using semi-structured interviews, right? So from semi-structured interviews, right? Maybe you interview CEOs, maybe you interview CFOs, right? So the department heads, right? So the highest level, the top level people, so you can interview for what? To understand the qualitative impacts. So focus groups with employees to gather insights on changes in organizational processes and decision making, right? So in quantitative phase or the survey, under the survey based phase, so you send questionnaires to 100 medium-sized companies, right? Maybe from the managers, you gather those data, right? But in qualitative phase, you select only 15 firms, right? Which are higher performing companies, right? Then you gather data using semi-structured interviews, right? So you interview top people, right? To understand the qualitative impacts. So also you can gather data from the employees of this company as well, right? Not only the top people, also the middle level managers, the lower level managers, so you can interview, right? So you can get their ideas as well, right? So in here, on the quantitative phase, you use descriptive statistics, t-test, regression. But here, you analyze data using thematic analysis, right? So you have to record the interviews, right? So different layers, the people who explain about maybe you ask the same questions from the top people and the middle level people. So you record these interviews. Then you transcribe those interviews. Then from the transcribed data, you decide the themes. First you code them, then you decide the themes, right? So those things you have to do under qualitative phase. I think Nuance may have explained these things, the thematic analysis. So maybe you have to develop a thematic map. So based on that, you can analyze the data under the qualitative phase. Then, so you have to integrate these quantitative and qualitative these. So that is we call triangulation. So you compare and contrast quantitative results with qualitative findings to validate or to enrich your findings, right? So you integrate or you compare and contrast quantitative results with qualitative findings to validate or the triangulate your findings, right? So maybe in quantitative phase, you will get statistical evidence on financial benefits of advanced management accounting techniques. Under the qualitative outcome, so you will have some sort of in-depth understanding about the organizational changes, improvement in decision-making process, employees' perceptions. So those things, right? So you will understand under the qualitative phase. But in quantitative phase, so you will understand about the statistical evidence. So all evidences may be in numbers, right? So after implementing advanced management accounting techniques, so how the financial benefits, so the performances improve. So that can be, you can understand by the numbers. But when it's come to qualitative outcomes, right? So you will understand about so how the decision making process of this company improved, right? So what are the perceptions of employees after implementing these type of techniques, right? So what type of organizational changes occurred after implementation of these techniques? So likewise, so you will find both quantitative outcomes and qualitative outcomes, right? So that is a simple example about um, mixed method research. Clear? Do you have any questions? So please ask if you have any questions about this process. Any questions? So please write. So please write maybe based on your research interest, right? According to your research interest, mixed method research title. So please write. So because in that title, and also you write the title as well as the research questions. So I'll give 5 minutes. So please write the research title. So what you want to identify, so the purpose, and also research questions. So please write down. So I'll give few minutes, and you can type on the chat box or you can talk to me, right? So I'll give few minutes. So please write down the title, the purpose, and the research question. So 2 research questions are enough, right? So write. Please write. Okay, so there is a one answer for this activity. So this is good, right? So maybe you use the ChatGPT, so that is okay, right? So here her title is The Impact of Digital Transformation on Management Accounting Practices, a mixed method study of organizations in Sri Lanka. So when you do a mixed method study or any study, so if you use in Sri Lanka, so it's not feasible, right? So you have to, how to say, so you have to think about a convenient sample for your study. So maybe you can say it, you can stop at this level, a mixed method study. Or if you want to specify the sample, you can say a mixed method study of organizations in Colombo Stock Exchange or the list of Chamber of Commerce. So likewise, or SMEs. So likewise, you can decide your sample, the convenient way, right? So if you use in Sri Lanka, so it's difficult, right? So how we are going to collect data? So therefore, don't use that type of thing, right? So if you do a large scale study, right? So not in your level, right? So it is not possible, right? Then here it says the research purpose has to examine how digital transformation influences management accounting practices in Sri Lankan organizations by quantitatively measuring its impact on key accounting functions and qualitatively exploring the experiences, challenges, and perceptions of management accountants and finance professionals. So that is good, right? So in quantitative phase, so you try to measure the impact of key accounting functions and how digital transformation impact on accounting functions. So that is quantitative phase. In qualitatively, so you try to explore the experiences, challenges that you face when you implement these type of digital technologies, right? So that is good. And when it's come to research questions, so she mentioned that how does digital transformation affect management accounting practices, right? How does digital transformation affect management accounting practices? So that is a qualitative question. And what is the relationship between digital technologies like ERP, AI, cloud accounting? So those things, management accounting practices. So that is the quantitative phase, right? So that's good. Okay. Then the next Savani, so she mentioned the impact of parents' economic status on students' academic achievements. Okay, impact, right? So what is the relationship between parents' economic status and students' academic achievement? So that is a quantitative phase, right? So how does family income affect student learning outcomes? So in this question, so it doesn't explain the qualitative nature of this study, right? So you can study. So after so what how the parents uh, how these things impact on parents' lifestyle or their economic condition, right? So because you want to study the impact of parents' economic status on student academic achievements, right? So purely you can do a quantitative study, but the qualitative aspect does not reflect from this question, right? So that is, you have to think carefully. So as he mentioned earlier, right? So In the qualitative phase, right? So here it says, how does digital transformation affect management accounting practices, right? So that is a qualitative one, right? So here also you have to specify how the parents' income affect students' learning outcomes. So something like that, right? Okay. So the other one I can't see, right? So I hope you can understand. So when you think about the mixed method question, right? So you have to decide quantitative and qualitative research questions in your study, right? Or the research objectives. Okay. I hope you have some sort of idea about mixed method research. So here, the next slide explains, so identifying situations in which mixed method research is needed, right? So the instances where we could use mixed method research. So read this. You are measuring a concept using questionnaire, right? So you administer or you send a questionnaire to study a particular research issue. Then it says you have a sense that scores are not telling you the entire story. Because once you administer a questionnaire to a large sample, you get some findings, right? So those findings does not tell the entire story. So that is what you found at the end. If you just ask few people about this concept, you might obtain better understanding, right? So for an example, we'll say, so you are sending a questionnaire, right? You are sending a questionnaire to a large sample, whether you understand activity-based costing. So something like that. We'll take a simple example. So you want to test whether this sample understand the activity-based costing or the balance scorecard, for an example. But when you collect data, right, so that the data does not, the quantitative data does not tell about the entire story. But if you select few people from that large sample and if you ask, if you interview them, right, interview them about the activity-based costing or the balance scorecard, then you will find some sort of better understanding about that scope, right? So in that situation, right, so you can use mixed method research. So here it says, mixed method research provides more complete understanding of research problem than either quantitative or qualitative alone, right? So so through the mixed method research, right, or mixed method results, right, so you can have a clear understanding or complete understanding about the research issue rather than doing either a pure quantitative study or a pure qualitative study, right? So here it says, so you wanted to study a particular concept. For that, you send a questionnaire. But after getting the questionnaire, so the result does not explain the full story. So therefore, you select few people from that sample and you further ask questions. So then you will understand the research, the kind of the research finding, right? Okay. Then the other one, you check the instruments. You check the instruments, maybe a questionnaire available to study a concept, right? Right. So for an example, to test the balance scorecard, right? So we'll say that particular concept. To understand the balance scorecard, you use an instrument, so questionnaire. But so when you review literature, so you will find in some research articles, so you will find the questionnaire at the end of the research article. But that research questionnaire is not relevant to our context. Maybe that study has been done in another country or a developed country, Western country. So that questionnaire is suitable for that particular context or that particular country or the region. But so we are in a developing country, right? So therefore, we cannot use the same questionnaire as it is for our studies. So therefore, so you can develop a context-specific instrument or the context-specific questionnaire which suits to your country, your region. So in that context also, you can use a mixed method research, right? So especially, so the instrument developed in a particular concept is not suitable for our study. So therefore, we can adjust that questionnaire which is suitable to our country. So in that situations also, we can use a mixed method, right? Okay, so those are some situations where we can use mixed method studies. So when you study a mixed method research methodology, so you can find these things. The entire process of mixed method research involves philosophical assumptions of inquiry, right? So in mixed method also, so you have philosophical assumptions of inquiry. So in quantitative studies also, qualitative studies also, you have particular assumptions of inquiry, right? So in qualitative research, so you start with a hunch, right? So you start with the broader research view, right? So I want to study this particular area. So you don't have a clear understanding about your research question at the beginning. So likewise, in mixed method research also, you have a philosophical assumptions of a research inquiry. Then you have research questions. Then you have objectives. Then you collect data. You analyze data. You interpret data. You report data. So in mixed method research also, these things involves in your research process, right? So that is what explained in this slide. And also, it involves quantitative research. In a quantitative research approach, so you have variables, you have hypotheses, you have research questions. And when you ask questions in your questionnaire, so you have close-ended questions, right? And you test reliability, validity, and you have statistical analysis like regressions, descriptive statistics, right? Path analysis, so like that type of statistical analysis, and you generalize the results, you replicate, right? So those type of things involves in quantitative research. So that part, right? So in mixed method research also, so it involves the qualitative research process, right? So if you take quantitative research, so these things we have to follow. So same things you have to follow in mixed method research. So that is what I want to emphasize. Then next, when it's come to qualitative research, so you have a central phenomenon, then general questions, so views of participants, right? So likewise, so you can see in qualitative research, so there are certain features. So those features involve in mixed method research as well, right? So then it involves collecting both quantitative and qualitative data, right? So in mixed method research, you collect quantitative data as well as qualitative data. So in quantitative data collection, you use instruments like questionnaires, checklists, records. In qualitative data, you collect data from interviews, ethnography. So that's mean participation, observation. Then documents analysis, right? Document analysis. Right? So interviews, ethnography, documents, audio, visual material. So all these things you collect, you use in mixed method research, quantitative as well as qualitative. And also when you analyze data, right? Under the quantitative analysis, you use statistical analysis. Right? Then you use descriptions. Then you compare between groups, right? So you relate variables. So all these things involve in mixed method research as well. And in qualitative analysis, so you use thematic analysis. So you use text, images, you code them, you develop themes, right? So based on that, you explain your analysis, right? So that is what you do in mixed method research. So both quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis involved in mixed method research. It involves mixing the data. So you can see here qualitative and quantitative results. Then you connect data, qualitative, quantitative, then come up with results. So here you collect data from different angles. But here you first finish qualitative data, then you go to quantitative, then results. So likewise. So embedded in data, right? So quantitative data can be, you can find qualitative data inside the quantitative data. Also qualitative, in the qualitative data, sometimes you can find out quantitative data. Embedded data means that, right? So it involves mixing the data. So that is another point in. And it may consist of single study or multiple studies. So in a single study, you collect quantitative data, qualitative data, then results. In multiple studies, so in the first study, you collect quantitative data. Second study, multiple, so we'll say cases, qualitative data, then qualitative data. So likewise, so in multiple studies also, or single studies, you can use mixed method research, right? So mixed method research varies in terms of its basic approach and its supplement. So this is very important. So in examination, so mainly we use this type of, this part, right? So mixed method research designs, right? So here it says mixed method research varies in terms of basic approach and its supplementary. So when you do a mixed method research, so you have a basic approach. So that's mean, so you mainly focus on quantitative study to explain the quantitative study. So you have a supplementary study as well. So that is maybe the qualitative phase. And also maybe you can start with qualitative, mainly qualitative study, and supplementary maybe quantitative. So that's what explained here. Mixed method research varies in terms of basic approach. So that can be quantitative or qualitative. Supplementary may be also quantitative or qualitative, right? Example, quantitative study may be supplemented with qualitative element. On the other hand, qualitative study may be supplemented with quantitative element, right? So we will study in detail these things next. Two important characteristics of mixed method research: research questions and research design. Research questions and research design. So there are three types of mixed method research questions: explanatory, exploratory, and convergent, right? Explanatory, exploratory, and convergent. So these are mixed method research questions. So what are the research designs? So if you have explanatory research question, then you have to follow the research design as this: sequential, explanatory, research design. If you have a research question based on explanatory nature, then you have to use the research design as sequential, exploratory, mixed method research design. And if it is a convergent type research question, then you have to choose concurrent convergent research design, right? So therefore, in mixed method, research questions and research designs are aligned with each other, right? So if you choose explanatory one, then you follow the sequential explanatory mixed method design. Then if you choose exploratory research question, if your research question coming under exploratory, then you have to choose the mixed method research design coming under sequential exploratory. So like this. But the most important thing, so look at this, right? So it says all three types of research questions rely on, all three types of research questions rely on both quantitative and qualitative data, but different in which point data are collected, right? But different in which point data are collected, also how the qualitative and quantitative data are used once they have been collected, right? So if you choose explanatory research design, right? So you need quantitative and qualitative data, but the data collection point is different from exploratory one or different from concurrent convergent one. So that is what you have to understand here. So in all these research methods, so you need quantitative and qualitative data, but the data collection point is different. Data collection point is different, right? So let's look at the three types of mixed method research designs. So first one, explanatory mixed method design. Explanatory mixed method design, right? So understand this one to explain about explanatory, right? So first you collect quantitative data. You collect quantitative data and you analyze data and you have the quantitative data set findings, right? Then based on that findings, you collect qualitative data, right? So here you can see it says sequential data collection. So once you collect data, right? Once you collect the quantitative data, then you go to the next step, right? Sequential data collection. So first you collect quantitative data, then you go to the qualitative data collection. So two-phase project. Quantitative phase first, qualitative second. One phase builds on other phase, right? One phase builds on other phase. So what is the intention? To explain results or to select participants to better understand the results, right? So please write down this one under this, right? So then you will understand clearly. When the research question is exploratory, when the research question is explanatory mixed method when the research question is explanatory mixed method, the quantitative data are collected first. Quantitative data are collected first. The quantitative data are generally collected after the qualitative data. Why? To serve the purpose of providing explanations for the results of quantitative data. To serve the purpose of providing explanations for the results of quantitative data. Right? So you first collect quantitative data, then you collect qualitative data. So why you collect quantitative data first? Because you want to serve the purpose of providing explanations for the results of quantitative data. Then next, right, with this type of research question, the quantitative and qualitative data are collected at different times. But they work together to answer the same research question. But they work together to answer the same research question. Okay. So you can see, so there is a sequential data collection. So first you collect quantitative data and results. So based on these results, you choose the sample here. So why you collect data first here? Because you want to explain further about the results using the qualitative phase, right? So to explain the results or to select participants to better understand results, right? Okay. So you can see here it says quantitative study may be supplemented with qualitative element, right? A researcher may collect data using a self-administered questionnaire followed by interviews with the subset of the participants to learn more about some of the survey responses. Okay, so you can understand that. A researcher may collect data using, so first he collect data using questionnaire, then based on the questionnaire results, they interview, right? The researcher interviews, choosing subset of the participants that they collected under quantitative phase, right? So this will enable validation of responses obtained through questionnaire, as well as provide a greater understanding of the results, right? So this is, we call triangulation. So you justify what you collected under the quantitative phase by qualitative phase, right? So that is, we call triangulation. So in triangulation, so there are several methods. I hope you are studied these things earlier. So this is what we do under explanatory research design, right? So the same thing can be explained using this diagram. right? So you can see here, so quantitative data collection. You first collect data, you analyze quantitative data, right? So based on the quantitative data, you select the cases, right? Then qualitative analysis, right? Qualitative analysis, then interpret the qualitative data using quantitative data as well, right? So here you can see, once you finish quantitative data collection, you go to the qualitative data collection, right? So that is what you do. So then so you have an activity to do, right? So please try this one. So what you have to do is, so this is explanatory sequential design. So that's mean you collect quantitative data first, and then you go to the qualitative data. So the topic, right? So you have to consider these two things: budgetary participation and employee performance. So considering these two things, right? So decide a main research question, right? So the main, based on the main research question, so what you want to study is this: how to understand how qualitative data can be used to explain quantitative findings. So use these two variables: budgetary participation and employee performance. So write down the steps that you have to follow under explanatory sequential design. So what are the steps that you have to follow under quantitative phase? What are the steps that you have to follow under qualitative phase? So quickly write down, but you have to consider these two concepts: budgetary participation and employee performance, right? Budgetary participation and employee performance. So write the steps in two phases: quantitative, because this is explanatory. So therefore you start from quantitative. Then you go to the qualitative. So what are the steps that you have to follow in quantitative phase, then qualitative phase? So please write down quickly. So I'll give few minutes, and also mark the attendance, right? So you can see the link to mark attendance. Please quickly work out this activity. So what are the steps that we have to follow? So no one has answered, right? So it is under the quantitative phase. So what are the things that we have to do? So I explained it, right? So here you have to collect quantitative data. So you have to write, so based on this budgetary participation and employee performance, how budgetary participation impact on employee performance, right? So that is the main topic then, right? So how budgetary participation impact on employee performance, right? So the main objective is, so first you do the quantitative data collection. Then you have to check that findings with qualitative data, right? So that is what here explained. So from this type of research design, explanatory type of research design, so here what you want to do is to understand how qualitative data can be used to explain quantitative findings, right? So this is the process, right? So first you collect data and you analyze data. So based on the results, you select few companies or few people. Then you interview them. Then analyze those interview results. Then taking both information, you interpret based on quanti and quali results. So no one has answered. So what are the steps? Very simple one, right? So you can see here, explanatory. We were talking about explanatory one, right? So topic budgetary participation and employee performance. So what you are going to do is understand how qualitative data can be used to explain quantitative findings, or the other way, how qualitative data are used to interpret and provide deeper insights into quantitative findings in a explanatory sequential mixed method design. So these are the steps, right? So simply, so you have to explain, so how you conduct this type of research. So develop a questionnaire. So because the first phase is quantitative, no? So therefore you have to develop a questionnaire containing, here I have mentioned 10 to 15. So based on the study, you have to design your questionnaire. Maybe you may have 20 to 25 questions. So based on the study, right? So you have to design a questionnaire, right, about budgetary participation and employee performance. Then you collect responses from 100 participants. So maybe you choose certain companies, you choose the managers who involves in budget preparation. So from 100 managers, so you get the information about this questionnaire. Then you analyze the data using percentages, descriptive statistics, right? So you analyze the data. Identify one interesting finding from the survey. So the next step, so when you move to the qualitative phase, so now you have quantitative findings. From that quantitative findings, so maybe you cannot explain the situation clearly. So therefore you choose few people or few companies, especially here few managers, right, who are preparing budgets. So you select few managers, right, for interviews. So develop 5 to 10 interview questions to explain the survey findings, right? So you can design an interview guide which contain 5 to 10 or 10 to 15 questions. Then conduct interviews with 15 participants, right? So from this participants, so you choose 15 people, 15 managers, right? And you further ask about these results, findings. Then you write a discussion about how the interview findings help to interpret the quantitative results, right? Because when you do this analysis, you can't explain the findings clearly. So that's why you chose 15 participants from this sample. So after asking questions, after getting their views, right, then you can explain the situation. So that is what you do under explanatory sequential design. Clear? So these are the steps that you have to follow. Are you clear? Quickly tell me. So we have to discuss many things, right? So are you clear now about the steps that you have to follow? We can move to the next one. Students, are you clear? So this is another example. Okay, thank you, Putta. So why don't you talk? So this is another example. So you will understand clearly about explanatory one, right? So this is another example. So the impact of budget participation, the same one, right? The same thing. This explains more about that situation, impact of budgetary participation on employee performance. So in quantitative study, you examine whether budgetary participation influence employee performance, right? So method, you distribute a structured questionnaire to 200 managers in manufacturing companies. So this is very important thing. So I missed that part in here. So you have to send 200 managers who are involved in preparation of budgets, right? Otherwise, there is no point of sending those questions to other managers, right? So here you can see you decide your independent variables, budgetary participation, dependent employee performance. So these are the analytical tools that you use, correlation and multiple regression analysis. For that, you develop hypothesis, right? The analysis shows the budgetary participation has significant positive impact on employee performance, but the effect is much stronger in some departments than others. So after getting your results, right? So first you develop hypothesis. Based on the hypothesis, you get this result, right? So these results explain, yes, there is a significant positive effect between budget participation and the employees' performance, but we can see certain stronger relationships in some companies than other companies, or some departments than other departments, right? So you found that that type of significant result from those findings, right? So that is the important thing that you notice, right? So generally you found there is a positive effect between budgetary participation and employee performance, but you found there is some sort of different results, right? So some companies, some departments have a stronger relationship. So now you want to find out why these companies has a stronger relationship, why other companies do not have a stronger relationship. So that is what you investigate through qualitative phase, right? Through qualitative phase, you investigate that, right? Explain why effects differ across departments. For that, you develop a interview, semi-structured interview guide. You send it to 15 managers from the selected departments with both high and low performance improvements, right? So you want to identify the reasons, no? So therefore, high performing departments, you have to choose high performing departments and low performing departments managers, right? Then you interview them, right? So you have to design sample questions, right, in the interview guide. How are employees involved in budgeting process? What challenges you face? Why do you think budget participation improve performance in your department? So from these questions, right, you ask these questions. So from these questions, you get answers from 15 managers. Then you can easily explain your quantitative phase results, right? So that is what you do under explanatory mixed method result. So you integrate findings, right? Quantitative findings, it says budgetary participation improves employee performance overall. Qualitative findings, interviews reveal the departments with supportive leadership, effective communication, employee empowerment benefit more from participative budgeting, while departments with rigid hierarchical structures experience fewer benefits, right? So this is so after interviewing some 15 managers, you found these information, you found these things, these factors, right? So if you have a supportive leadership, effective communication, employee empowerment, so if you have these features, then there is a more employee performance, right? So, but if there is a rigid structures, right, so the employee performance is low, right? So likewise. So the quantitative phase identifies whether budgetary participation affects employee performance, while the qualitative phase explains why and how the relationship varies across departments, right? So you can see the difference. So in quantitative phase, it just say whether there is a relationship between budgetary participation and employee performance. But in quantitative phase, it further investigates, it further explains about why there is differences between, why and how there are differences between departments, right? So that is what do under qualitative phase, right? So here it says qualitative phase provides deeper insights into the statistical results obtained in the quantitative phase, right? So that is what happened under explanatory mixed method design, right? So clear? So the other one is the other side of explanatory, right? So exploratory. So this is exploratory. So you collect first qualitative data using interviews. Then based on the qualitative data, so you collect data under quantitative phase, right? So here also sequential data collection. So that's mean once you finish this, you go to this. Two-phase project, qualitative phase first, quantitative second, one phase built on other phase. Intent is to first explore in order to develop instrument, to identify categories, taxonomy for follow-up, right? So So further it says, qualitative study may be supplemented with quantitative element. Within a qualitative study, the researcher uses focus groups to collect information, followed by quantitative survey with a larger group to validate the responses of the focus group. So in exploratory research design, you first do the interviews. When you do the interviews, you focus few groups, right? So when you get results from the focus groups, right? So you can't generalize that results to the larger group, right? Or if you want to explain more about the focus group, so you then move to a quantitative survey, right? To validate the information that you get under the qualitative phase, right? So the purpose of doing a quantitative survey under exploratory studies is that, right? So you want to justify or you want to validate the responses of qualitative phase using the quantitative phase, right? So this is what happened in the exploratory, right? Research, right? Qualitative data collection. Then you do the qualitative data analysis, right? Then qualitative findings. So here you conduct interviews with 50 participants, 8 observations, 16 document reviews, right? So you analyze data using this method. Then you develop codes, themes, maybe using thematic analysis. Then you go to the quantitative research, right? So you develop a questionnaire using 80 item questions. Then you send those questionnaires to 500 individuals. Then you analyze the data, test the reliability. So those things you do under the data analysis part. Then you explain the results. This is exploratory sequential design. First qualitative, second quantitative. So here, exploratory sequential design. So example, activity. So we don't have much time. So I will explain this one again. The topic is challenges in using management accounting information for decision making. To understand how qualitative findings can be developed into quantitative research instruments. So what are the steps that you have to follow here? So here you can see the activity 2. So exploratory one, right? So you want to find out challenges in using management accounting information for decision making. So what is the objective? Understand how qualitative findings, because you do qualitative data collection first. Qualitative findings can be developed into quantitative research instrument. So see the steps. Conduct 3 to 5 semi-structured interviews with managers or accounting professionals, right? So you do semi-structured interviews. Identify and summarize the major themes that emerge from the interviews. Identify and summarize the major themes that emerge from the interviews, because so once you collect data from interviews, so you have to use thematic analysis. So then you identify themes, major themes emerge from the interviews. Then next step is you develop a questionnaire based on the identified themes, right? Then you administer that questionnaire to 15, 20, or maybe number is different, right, to respondents. Then you get the quantitative findings here, right? You analyze those findings using tables, percentages, charts, descriptive statistics, anything. Then you can write the brief discussion, explaining whether the quantitative findings support the themes identified during the interviews, right? Because at the beginning you interviewed and you developed some themes. So then you move to the quantitative data collection. So in the discussion, you have to explain whether the quantitative findings support to your qualitative themes. So that is what you do under exploratory sequential design, right? Okay. So this is another example. You can see exploring the adoption and impact of lean accounting practices in small and medium-sized enterprises, right? So qualitative, you start with qualitative study. So these are the research questions. How do SMEs perceive lean accounting practices? What are the common challenges and benefits experienced by SMEs in adopting lean accounting? So simple research questions, right? So in first phase, qualitative, so you select 15 SMEs that have recently adopted lean accounting practices, right? So the most important thing is this is a study which is focused on lean accounting practices. So therefore, you have to select companies which are adopted lean accounting practices. That's why here it says select 15 SMEs that have adopted lean accounting practices. Then you collect data using semi-structured interviews with key people, right? And focus groups also. Then you can analyze data using thematic analysis. This is the qualitative phase. Then you go to the quantitative phase. Here you develop hypothesis. In the hypothesis, right? So based on the qualitative findings, right? So this is important. Based on the qualitative findings, develop hypothesis to be tested quantitatively. So what are the hypotheses? SMEs that adopt lean accounting practices will experience significant improvements in operational efficiency. Second one, adoption of lean practices will positively impact the financial performance. So these are the hypotheses. Then for that, you have to develop a survey questionnaire, right? Then you select the sample. You have to select larger sample, 100 SMEs for the survey. Then you collect data, right? Then analyze the data using statistical methods. So that is the quantitative phase, right? Then you integrate those two phases and come up with common finding, right? So that is what you do under exploratory. Then the third one, concurrent. Concurrent triangulation mixed method. So that's mean at the same time, you collect quantitative and qualitative data. At the same time, you collect quantitative, qualitative data. So one phase project, concurrent data collection, findings triangulated from combined data, right? Intent is to merge two separate strands of data. So this is, so it's not a sequential one. At the same time, you collect quanti and quali data, right? So that is we call concurrent one, right? So you can see here. So this is a quantitative phase. This is qualitative phase. Under quantitative phase, so you use instrument like survey questionnaires, right? Checklist charts likewise. So the product or the outcome is numeric data. But when it's come to qualitative data, so you use interviews, observations, document analysis. So your outcome is text data, image data, right? Here numeric data. These are text, right? Then quantitative data analysis, you can use the statistical analysis, right? Structural equation modeling. So you can use these techniques. Then here you use thematic analysis, coding, those things. So the outcome will be codes, themes, so those things. So the same time, so you will find the results. So you have to compare the quanti results with quali results. Then you combine, right, your results in a composite model, right? So that is what you do under concurrent triangulation design. Okay, so those are the three methods. So you have to study thoroughly about these approaches, right? Explanatory, exploratory, and concurrent. And so you have to think about a research issue and practically think how to apply these mixed method, three types of research designs under each research questions or objectives, right? Okay. So arguments against mixed method research, right? So there are certain arguments. So some researchers says, so this is a useful method, or this is a valid method to do research, but others says, so this is not a good method to do research, right? So these are some of the arguments. Embedded method argument means, so they says research methods carry different epistemological and ontological commitments. So therefore, they says, so this is not feasible. This is not a good research method because its epistemological nature and the ontological commitments are different. Then paradigm argument, it says quantitative and qualitative research are separate, incompatible paradigms. So they says quantitative research and qualitative research cannot be compared, right? So these are two different paradigms. So we have to think about these things separately. So therefore, combination of these two methods are not a possible or the valid one, right? It's not valid. They explain under that paradigm argument. But you can see here under the technical version, they says quantitative and qualitative research strategies are connected with unique epistemological and ontological assumptions. Therefore, so doing this type of research is possible, they says, right? Because there are certain strengths in data collection and data analysis because we collect both data and we analyze both data, right? So this is the positive side, and these are negative sides of mixed method research. And criticisms, so it says there is much criticism of mixed method research, right? So as we emphasized earlier, right? So it says the most important the research approaches belong to opposite ontological and epistemological orientations, the same thing, right? However, this is the important part. Despite this criticism, the mixed method is gaining ground as a popular method of research, right? So you can witness this if you search the literature, research articles, right, in the Google Scholar or any other mode, right? So you can find so many mixed method type of research, right? Even though the researchers argue that this is not a good method, but most researchers follow this method, right? So those are the things that I want to highlight. So you know the triangulation. Have you studied triangulation earlier under the nuances sessions? Triangulation. So there are three types of triangulation: data triangulation, theoretical triangulation, methodological triangulation. So those things. So triangulation is a very important thing coming under mixed method, because you have to justify or you have to triangulate your findings which you obtain through qualitative one with quantitative one, or either the other side, right? So you have to prove the quantitative findings are tally with qualitative findings. So that is triangulation. Data triangulation means, so you collect data using questionnaire. Those findings tally with qualitative one, interviews finding. So that is data triangulation. Then methodological triangulation maybe if you follow different types of methods. Theoretical triangulation means, so you follow different theories. So maybe institutional theory explains this, stakeholder theory explains this. So you have to justify that both theories explain the same thing. So that is we call theoretical triangulation. So likewise, there are different types of triangulation methods. So in mixed method, right, so triangulation is very important to validate your reliability and validate your results, right? So those are the things that I want to highlight. So any questions, students? So we can stop at this level if you don't have any questions. So you can ask anything under this topic if you have any questions. Okay, it seems you don't have any questions, so we'll stop at this level. Okay, thank you. Good night.